Ho, Coaching Success Radio. Welcome to the podcast. I'm William Winterton. Hey, how do you balance it all? How do you do it? Maybe you got kids, you got a wife or a husband, you've got family you're dealing with, you've got personal life, you've got a business you're trying to run. How do you keep it all together? The busier we get, the more successful we get. Sometimes it's really hard to find that balance. So today I have a guest. His name is Tom Sylvester, and he's going to talk about how he and his wife have created a solution that helps them and helps others stick around. As I build my coaching business, I want to know how to effectively serve clients and make more money doing it. This podcast will pull back the curtain to reveal exactly how successful coaches are building their empires. Join me as I engage with top coaches from all over the world to discover their secrets. No theatrics and no theory, just real life strategy. My name is William Winterton, and this is Coaching Success Radio. All right, welcome everybody to Coaching Success Radio. I am so excited about today's program because we have a very special guest with us. Over the past 15 years, he has worked with thousands of businesses, from startups to Fortune 500 companies. He and his wife, Ariana, founded a coaching and training company that helps entrepreneurs build their business and create more impact for their customers and more freedom in their lives. They're also the host of the weekly podcast, Lifestyle Builders for Entrepreneurs. And as you'll hear here, Tom is incredibly passionate about what he does. So I am super excited today. Please help me welcome the co-founder of Lifestyle Builders. This is Tom Sylvester. Tom, how you doing?
I'm doing well. And William, thank you for having me on the show.
Absolutely, man. I've been checking out your podcast, enjoying what you're doing, and you and your wife have a good thing going with that. It's good. So tell me a little bit about your business, because that's an interesting dynamic to have the two of you working together. Give me the foundation of that. How'd that kind of start to play out?
Absolutely. So I'll tell you what we have now, and then we'll kind of tell you how we got here.
Perfect.
So essentially where we're at today is we run 3 different businesses. We have a coaching business in addition to actually a retail wine and liquor store, as well as a real estate investing company. So we also have 2 kids, and we were both able to leave our jobs. I left mine 2 years ago at age 33, and she left hers about 7 years ago when we had our first child. So nice. Leading up to that, essentially, we met the first day of college. And when we went to graduate college, I was looking ahead and I was like, I had a software developer degree. And I was like, I don't want to sit in a cubicle for the next 45 years of my life. Like, that's not what I want things to look like. And so I set a goal to retire by 35. And I had no idea how we would make that happen. But I basically figured 15 years would give us enough time to figure it out, while also then, we'd be 35 at that point. And then while also giving us enough time to enjoy the rest of our life with our family and not spend so many years working. And so basically Ariana was not on board with that at all. And, we had to go through a lot to get aligned on ultimately what we want our ideal life to look like, and then figure out what were the pieces and stepping stones that we had to do to make that a reality.
Got it. So when you first got started, then what was the first business endeavor that you two took on together? You mentioned real estate, liquor store, obviously you're coaching and everything now. What was kind of the first, even if it didn't work out, what was the first thing you guys got into?
Yeah, so there was a whole bunch that didn't work out early on because basically I had no idea what I was doing, but I started looking at what I deemed successful people and then tried to model them. So I tried the stock market, and then I realized we were fresh out of college, in a lot of debt, and had no money.
Right.
I tried MLMs and it wasn't my vibe. And I tried a couple different businesses and ultimately tried to get into real estate because we were renting an apartment at the time. And I said, instead of spending this money on rent, we could actually buy a duplex, live in one half, rent out the other half, and then we'd essentially be living rent free. So I thought it was the best idea ever. Ariana hated it. She's like, no, I want a house. I don't want to be landlords. And so ultimately the first business ended up becoming real estate investing because I was driving home one day from work, frustrated, not sure how I was going to figure this out. And I heard an ad on the radio for a free 2-hour real estate training. And then from that, they sold you into a 3-day, $500 real estate training. And both of those were good, but it was all very much positioned to upsell you into very expensive coaching.
Of course.
And so with that, I was like, we don't have any money. We're in a ton of debt. There's no way I'm going to do this. And then their sales tactics were so good. And I was like, you know what, if I don't do this, like, it's never going to work out. So I ended up spending about $7,500 on two credit cards because we didn't even have one that had enough space on it. And bought this advanced real estate training and had to tell Ariana basically after the fact that I did this when she already didn't approve of real estate. And then that conversation didn't go very well. But what
Really?
it led to, yeah, surprise, right? And oh, by the way, it was about 9 months before we got married.
Oh yeah, okay.
So
That's awesome, man.
the good thing that came out of that though was that it forced us to really start talking about the future and getting aligned on where we wanted our lives to be and would look like, and then figuring out how we would get there. And eventually that led to our coaching business, because as people saw that we achieved success and were able to leave our jobs, they started asking us like, hey, can you help us do the same thing?
Awesome. So it really basically took trial by fire and just kind of both of you working very much kind of there's a lot of friction just trying to get that figured out, because it is difficult. I do a lot of business stuff with my wife as well, and we've worked real estate, we've worked videography company that we've run, we've done coaching business, we've done online, we've done MLM, we've done all that stuff together, right? Mm-hmm. And there's always working with somebody who you have that relationship with as the wife and the mother. There is a lot of that friction. So what was that process becoming aligned together, working as a partnership, and in addition to being husband and wife, in addition to being mom and dad? How does that look like? How does that work for you guys?
Yeah, so early on, it was basically an agreement that we were both going to work our jobs, and I was going to do real estate on the side because I had to start buying real estate to pay back that money I'd spent. And so at that point, she was just like, this is your thing. You go do it. I'm not going to stop you, but I'm also not going to help. And then several years in, we kept buying properties. We sold some. We kept a bunch of them. And then as we got pregnant with our first child, I had this idea to open a liquor store. And basically, there was a store for sale. The numbers didn't work out, but I said, hey, we have a real estate company. Let's just buy a building and then we'll open our own store. And so she wasn't really on board with that. But as we started talking about having kids and what she wanted to do, what she realized was that she could leave her job, do some of the back end work in our two businesses, and then not have to go back to a job. So it helped me. It let her stay home. So she ended up doing that. Then as time went on, and we were looking at, okay, well, now that we got you out of a job, how do we get me out of a job? That was when we started saying, okay, let's start to figure out the roles that we're going to play in each of these businesses. We kind of had that all figured out. And then when I left my corporate consulting job to then start working with entrepreneurs, we had to like re-go through that again, because now we're both working from home full time. And we had to really figure out like, what are each of our roles? And one big epiphany that she had was that she's not a coach. Because for a long time, we had this coaching business and she felt like we both had to be coaches. And when we kind of dove in, what we realized was that some of the roles that she liked to do, she didn't feel like she could do because she had a coach. And because I had years of experience coaching, she always felt like she was in my shadow. So it's been this ongoing kind of process of constantly figuring out, what do we each want to be doing? Let's make sure we shift into those roles. And the things that we don't want to be doing, let's make sure we either automate with technology or we delegate to a staff or a team member.
Perfect. It's really playing into each other's strengths and weaknesses is what it sounds like. And finally getting that figured out. And I know it's an ongoing battle. It's never
absolutely
sorted out. So for your coaching world then, and since we're talking to mostly coaches out here, tell me how that started out. You said you've been coaching for a while. When in the process of real estate and buying liquor stores, when did coaching show up in your life?
Yeah. So basically my corporate career was a software developer. And as I was in there, I was always finding that I just wanted to make things better. I wanted to make improvements. And I found that a lot of my colleagues didn't really like that because they thought that I wanted to like take their jobs. So I ended up going back to grad school and got my master's in like business leadership to learn how to do that better. And what I found was that actually took me out of being a software developer into a project manager, a program manager, and eventually I got into really just helping a lot of teams in the company I was working at to deliver their products faster. And so my goal was just to stay in that company until I left. Corporate politics came into play, some other stuff happened, and I ended up leaving my corporate job and I started to work for a consulting company. And so this was pretty cool. It was a totally new experience, but I started working with these Fortune 500 executives and their teams to help really initially create high performing teams to get their products out faster. And then what that led into was then helping the leaders of these teams now figure out, how do I lead this high performing team? And now that we're getting products out faster, how do I adjust my business strategy so that marketing, sales, all the pieces are working together? So I did that for several years. And as we had a second kid and then, they started growing up, I was away 4 or 5 days a week at these different companies. And so my wife and I kind of went back to what our plan was. And we said, this isn't the life that we had, dreamed for ourselves.
Sure.
And so I ended up leaving the corporate consulting, while at the same time we started having people reach out. So we said, you know what? We've got experience not only running our businesses, but I've been working with companies essentially doing a lot of this stuff. What if we just take that and then shift it into focusing on entrepreneurs and really people like us that have a similar desire and a similar outcome?
Nice. So now who are you saying you're serving? Is like, who is the ideal client for you at this point in this state?
So they're entrepreneurs, small business owners. And really where we help out the most is when you already have the established business and you're trying to scale. Because my background is really heavy in leadership development,
Sure.
process improvement, waste reduction. But what we've ended up doing over time has been building out programs and training courses that help people who are just getting started all the way up through people that are scaling, up to $1 million and beyond. And so what's been cool about that journey is we've been able to help the entrepreneurs that are really, they've created a successful business, but now they're trapped by it. So we've helped them to get freed up from their business so that they're working on the business and they have more freedom rather than constantly being trapped. But we're also then able to help new entrepreneurs build their business in a way that avoids them hitting burnout and running into building a business that now becomes a very low paying, very time intensive job.
That's fantastic. So it's actually kind of across the gamut. You can work with any company, any business. Is there a particular like a niche of businesses, or are you just open to anybody who's an entrepreneur, anybody who's in any field, or is there a kind of a sweet spot that you really, either how much, you said larger companies, established companies, people who aren't just starting out off the ground, right? People who are established.
Yeah. So a lot of the people we work with end up being service providers.
Sure.
So they could be coaches, consultants. They could also be CPAs, attorneys, etc. And usually our sweet spot is when a company has a couple $100,000 in revenue, and what's happening is that they're making good sales, but now they're basically running out of time.
Right.
And so really what we help them do is to figure out where they should be spending that time, and then how to not only design the business to get them out of the roles they shouldn't be doing, but also how to then support them as the leader to put strategic planning in place to help understand how to hire and really lead the employees that are then going to be doing the day-to-day work for the company so that they can step away and really be the leader of that company.
Awesome. Be able to break that ceiling that's kind of stopping them at that $100,000-$200,000 mark and be able to.
Yeah. Absolutely. Because, what ends up happening, like people are always like, well, do you work with this industry or that industry? And the reality is like business is business. So when we work with an entrepreneur, we're expecting them to be the expert at what they do. So if you're helping people with websites, you should be the expert at that. But in terms of running and growing a business, it really comes down to the same basic principles, and 80% of that is the same regardless of company. So a lot of what we help entrepreneurs do is to understand how to structure and run their company.
Awesome. It's all the systems and the processes and all the things that don't come along with the training of learning how to design a website, right?
Absolutely. Because especially for coaches and consultants, what ends up happening is that we get really good at what we do. And a lot of us will come from like a corporate background, and you go from being really good at what you do to you're like, I'm just going to step out on my own. But what you don't realize is that there's all these other hats and all these other pieces that are required to build a successful business. And oftentimes what happens is that the best coaches end up really struggling in business because they're not great at, for example, marketing and selling their services. They're really good at delivering them. So a lot of what we end up helping them do is to say, here's what this business needs to look like, and let's figure out where the gaps are and help you to close those.
Perfect. So I want to go into something kind of interesting. You and your wife obviously working together, and then you have 2 children. Is that correct?
Yep.
How old are they?
7 and 4.
So I have read other places that you are kind of getting them as well into this entrepreneurial mindset and kind of helping to work with them already at a young age. I've done the same thing with my kids who are now a little bit older than
Nice.
yours. But yeah, so tell me a little bit about that. I know we have some people in the audience who have kids and are coaching and trying to, kind of juggle the business at home life with the home life of the kids. So how has that been for you guys?
Yeah, well, so one of the key things with all of this is that a lot of people try to achieve this work-life balance, and especially when you are in a relationship, when you have kids, that can seem very overwhelming. So one of the things we always talk about is really focusing on work-life integration. And what that really means for us is figuring out what's important and what's a priority and making sure all the pieces of your life integrate to support that. So, for example, when our kids were younger, we had them both in like a preschool daycare program because we realized that if we could spend time working and doing what we need to during the day, then we would be freed up to focus on enjoying time with them, like at night and on the weekends. And what we ended up doing was really figuring out what do we want our schedule to look like, and
Right.
then we've incorporated them in. So we do all sorts of things as a family, and part of that is talking about what do mommy and daddy do, how do we make money, and we've brought them into our businesses so they understand and can tell people here's the different ways that we make money, and they're actually now looking for their own opportunities to be able to make money. So my daughter is always coming up with different ideas, or she sees different problems and working on saying, hey daddy, could we create something like this that would help these people?
That's awesome, man. That's exactly what I love that idea. I love the idea of just getting your kids to start seeing the opportunities out there and just asking the questions. I think that's brilliant. That's good parenting. So,
Absolutely. Well, and a lot of people are always like, well, the big question for us comes up is, are you going to send your kids to college?
right.
And our answer is always like, if they want to go to college and that makes sense for them, then they will. But what a lot of people do and what a lot of people struggle with is they don't think about where they want things to be in the future. And as a result of that, they don't make intentional choices. So our kids, if going to college helps them get to where they want to be, then that's something they'll do. If they decide that they want to go a different path, that'll work as well. But we're trying to give them the choice and the freedom to be able to make the right decision for themselves.
Which is awesome. Yeah, it's kind of the same principle. It's very, very interesting because we do the same thing with our kids. Our daughter's going into high school next year. And we just told her, like, if you want to become a doctor, like, yeah, you got to go to school, like, go to college. But if you just want to start a business up, like, just start running, just start seeing what happens and start going that direction. So I want to go into a little bit about some of the things that you have done in your coaching. And actually, if you're working with somebody who is a coach or a consultant, and let's just say that they're at the point where they've got a little bit of traction going. What's some advice you would give somebody who is maybe fairly new to the coaching world, or who has been going for a while and is trying to get a little bit of traction in their business? What's some of the biggest things that have been holding people back from actually really blowing up their coaching business that you've seen?
Absolutely. So, the majority of what I'm going to share with you, not only have I seen with other coaches, but we've gone through it as well.
Sure.
And so, the first thing that I found with a lot of coaches is that they're not super clear on who they work with and how they help them. And I'm a prime example of this because when I got into coaching, it was like, well, I have a IT background. I can help people with that. I worked with leadership. I can help people with that. I work with systems and processes. I can help people with that. We're big into like agile and project management and lean startup. So it was like someone wanted to work with me and I'm like, I can help you with all these things. And what that meant was a couple things. One, we found a lot of people really liked us, but they didn't necessarily work with us. They would go and work with a competitor, and we didn't understand why, but it was ultimately because our message wasn't clear, who we helped and how. So people weren't able to relate. The second piece of that is so many people focus on what they know or what they do and not enough on who it is they want to serve and really getting in and understanding their customer. So like one of the things we'll have any new business, but especially like a new coach or a consultant do is just have conversations with the people they think they want to help. And sometimes this is 25 conversations, sometimes it's 50, sometimes it's 100. But what we're looking to do is do two things. One, really hone in on who it is you want to work with, and maybe more importantly, who you don't want to work with. And then second, truly understand the struggles they're facing and what their desired outcomes look like. Because when you understand those two things, now you can match up your expertise and create a solution that will help solve that problem. And then when you go back to that person, you can say, look, you have this problem, you want to achieve this outcome, and you've run into these barriers along the way. Here's this framework or this model that we use, and this is how this is going to help you get from where you're at to where you want to be. So for most new coaches and consultants, they're not super clear on their customer. And a lot of times they're spending way too much time on a bunch of activities that don't directly lead to solving the problem that's right in front of them. So what I mean by that is most new businesses, most new coaches will go build a website. They'll worry about their name. They'll worry about a logo. They'll work on creating a bunch of content. They might create a podcast. And all of that stuff is good, but it's not what you do at the beginning of your business. At the beginning of your business, you have one focus. You want to validate your business model, and you do that by having customers pay you. So anything that isn't directly helping you clarify who your customers are or work on getting sales is actually distracting you from what you should be focusing on.
That's incredibly powerful. And I hope people are listening to that, because it's the same whenever I'm working with somebody. So many times go through and talk about all the things that you can do. And you have this whole toolbox of skill sets, right? And sure, you can go out and just change all sorts of stuff, but it's not until you dial in super specifically on something that's been proven, on something that you, like you said, you have to go out there and you have to validate it, that this is actually something people need and not just something you're good at and you want to do. If there's no demand for it, it's not going to help you, right? So so super, super important. That's amazingly very powerful, and hopefully people are taking note of that, because it's I'm not the only one saying it. Everybody's like, you gotta focus.
Yeah, well, and I mean, here's a great example too.
Yes.
You've got to say no to good opportunities to say yes to the great ones. So for example, our first business was real estate investing. And for a while we were also helping people with that. But what we realized was that was distracting our message and not making it clear what we did. So if somebody wants to invest in real estate, we actually don't coach them on that anymore. We found someone else who's really good at that and we refer them away. So what we really focus on is entrepreneurs. So if you're a real estate investor and you want help growing your business and focus on the business side, we'll do that. But we've had to say no to coaching people on real estate because it doesn't make sense. And it, confuses our audience if we're saying, well, we can help you with this and this and this. Right. It's like, no, we've got to really hone in on what it is we're specifically going to do. And then it makes all of our customers and clients very similar and repeatable so we can scale. Because that's the other thing a lot of coaches will do is when they take on any client, now every client becomes a custom case, and it takes you a ton of time to be able to craft a plan and figure out how you're going to cater to everyone, to where when you figure out the same type of client that you bring in, you can take them through a consistent process or a consistent set of principles, and you're not having to recreate the wheel every time.
That's, again, it's a system thing. It's not working yourself to death, even if you have the skill set to handle a whole bunch of different things. So now this is a great transition to what you're talking when your company, Lifestyle Builders. So tell us why Lifestyle Builders, why the name, and kind of what you do with. I know you got a book. Has it out yet? The book, is that what I'm seeing behind you, or is that?
Yeah. So we have copies. The ebook will be out in July, and the physical book will be out in October.
Awesome. So the book, the podcast, obviously everything. So tell me, dive into that and tell me a little bit about Lifestyle Builders.
Yeah. So we actually had two different names prior to settling on Lifestyle Builders. Okay. And what ended up happening and how we figured this out was I had a coaching client after I left my corporate consulting. And this client we took from $40,000 in debt to over $1 million in sales in about 18 months. And so this guy did so well, ended up being able to move his family from Florida to Barcelona, which was like their dream. Like everything was going well. And I was like, man, if I can just have more people like this, like my business will be amazing. And so after we finished out coaching, they moved, everything went good. And then a couple months later, he reached out to me frantically. And he was like, Tom, I really need help. I don't know what to do. I'm like, hey man, we'll solve it. Like, what's going on? And he said, my wife, took the kids. She went back to the US and she wants a divorce. And to me, that was like a punch in the gut. And it really impacted me. And I spent a lot of time talking to Ariana. And what we realized was that we didn't just want to help people build a successful business if that meant that the rest of their life was going to fall apart along the way.
Wow. Okay.
And so when we talked about this, we had a lot of conversations. You can't really see it behind me, but we actually created a manifesto, and we said, here's all the things we stand for, and here's all the things we stand against. So we stand against hustling 24/7. Yes, there's times when you're going to work hard, but we stand against putting your business before your family. So we went through and figured out what was really important to us, what some of our core values were. And then Lifestyle Builders came out because we said, you know what we want to do is help people build their ideal lifestyle through entrepreneurship. So we want to help people build a business in the context of supporting what else is important in their life. And so once that happened, it took something that was initially like very negative to us, and we turned it into a positive and said, you know what, this is a huge gap in the market. It's something we struggled with. And now what's amazing is that we get to help other people solve this problem for themselves and their businesses.
It's a great story. That's awesome. And so then how long has this been kind of like, let me rephrase that. What do you see going on down the road here in the future? What is the new path with Lifestyle Builders? What do you see this new kind of direction of your company going in the next few years? Where are you headed?
Absolutely. So really the biggest focus now is, now that we honed in our messaging, now that we've really validated and honed in all the different ways that we coach people, it's getting it out to the masses. Because like when we started our coaching business, our only offer was one-on-one coaching, and that was several $1,000s, and it wasn't accessible to everyone else. So for coaches and consultants, I always recommend your first offer should be something in the middle of the road. When we help people build a business, we help them create what's called a solution suite. So it's the eventual set of products or services that you'll sell, and each item in there should address a specific problem for your customer. Because what a lot of people don't realize is your customer has a problem now, but when you help them solve that problem, you're actually going to expose another problem.
Yep.
So what we help coaches and consultants do is to build that solution suite so that for each time they solve a problem, they then tell their customer, now that this problem is solved, here's your next one, and we have something for you as well. But what we want people to do is start in the middle, because you're going to have less clients to make the amount of money that you want, and you're really going to be able to serve them much closer. You're going to be able to be more hands-on. You're going to see where they're struggling, and you're going to be able to help them really achieve success, which will get you testimonials, case studies, and make it easier to sell and grow in the future. So that's what we did. But what kept like burning and kind of hurting me was I saw all these people trying to start a business and struggling, and yet it wasn't financially feasible for us to go and help all of them. But what's really cool, and like why we wrote the book is everything that we teach in our higher end programs. But now we can get this out to people for less than $20. They have the whole system and framework that we use. So next couple of years, what we're really looking forward to is being able to help more people with this and not let price be a reason that somebody doesn't get started down this path.
Awesome. So so then getting the book out was really just a way for you guys to kind of unload a little bit of what you've been up to, and kind of, I guess, creating room in your mind now to create the next like set of things that you're going to be doing. Instead of, it's kind of releasing, giving an opportunity for people to, like you said, to get into your world a little bit more, a little bit easier, a little bit more inexpensively, and then really be able to help them out in a much broader sense. So
yeah, well, and that really started with our podcast, because what we said was, let's just take, like, if we're gonna be sharing a lesson, why not record that lesson once and get it out to everybody and get it out for free? So like that's what we do on our podcast, and people will, like, anyone that listens will see that we talk a lot about business topics, but we also talk a lot about life topics. Like we've talked recently about imposter syndrome. We talked about parental guilt, and how people will look at you when you're an entrepreneur and when you're a parent, and the expectations. So we talk about all these things, but what we realized after getting feedback from people was that the topics are all over the place. So if you're listening week to week, you're going to get valuable information, but it's not like a step-by-step roadmap. And so what we said was, well, with the book, what we can do is have a very low price product that is more step-by-step. So listening to our podcast is great, but it's not necessarily going to give you step 1, step 2, step 3.
Sure.
But that's where the book comes in for a very low cost.
All right, give us a shot of the book again one more time and tell us that's on Amazon. Is there a better place to go, like through your site, or how do we get that?
Yeah, so it's called Lifestyle Builders: Build Your Business, Quit Your Job, and Live Your Ideal Lifestyle. So you can get more information on the book at lifestylebuildersbook.com. But anywhere books are sold, you can pre-order it and eventually order it when it comes live.
Nice. And you said July is what you said, August?
Yeah, July the ebook will be online, and then the physical book will be released in October.
Awesome, man. Cool. And then people, I would highly recommend the podcast. It's a great ton of content, like you said, and absolutely just thrilled to have you on and being able to have this conversation with you. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you kind of wish I did, or something you'd like to just kind of give us a final thought, final word?
Yeah, we've been kind of hitting on it throughout this, but really, either before you start your coaching and consulting business, or if you're already in it, one of the most important things is to take a step back and really think about why you're doing this. There's the why for your business, but you really want to figure out why you're doing this for your personal life. Because once you're super clear on what the future looks like for you, like we always tell people, it's just like GPS, right? You've got a starting point, which is where you're at today. And then you've got a destination, which is where you want to be. And what that will then allow you to do is to draw a roadmap. And then just like GPS, what you want to do is check in along the way. And when you're off on that roadmap, you can adjust back. So if you haven't really gotten super clear on what you want your life to look like in the future, and especially if you haven't done that with your spouse, like Ariana and I didn't do early on, take some time to just talk about what is it you want your life to look like in the future, and then what roles are you each playing, and what are the stepping stones to ultimately get you there.
Tom, this has been absolutely a pleasure. I hope to have you back on at some point and kind of continue our conversation. But in the meantime, I just want to thank you again for taking the time out of your life and joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. These are such important topics, and I'd love to come back in the future.
Wow, that was awesome. Thank you so much for tuning in and checking us out. New episodes are coming out every few days, including lots of conversations with massively successful coaches sharing their secrets with you. So be sure to subscribe to our podcast and YouTube channel so that you don't miss out. And if you're looking for a way to start making serious money from your coaching, you need to check out my free training. It's at williamwinterton.com. I lay out the step-by-step on how to start making 5 figures a month in the next 60 days. Check it out, williamwinterton.com. I'll see you next time.